On January 6, 1995, an armed man walked into a Pittsburgh bank and handed the teller a demand note. He didn't whisper, didn't rush, didn't look nervous. He took the money, walked out, and went directly to a second bank across the city. Same routine, same calm, same complete lack of disguise. No mask, no hat pulled low, no sunglasses, nothing. His face, entirely visible, stared directly into the surveillance cameras at both locations. By the end of the day, McArthur Wheeler was sitting in a police station looking at the footage of himself robbing 2 banks in broad daylight, and his reaction wasn't guilt or resignation. It was genuine confusion, because he had rubbed lemon juice on his face before leaving the house. Wheeler had read somewhere that lemon juice could be used as invisible ink, that it only became visible when exposed to heat, and somewhere in the architecture of his reasoning, he'd arrived at a conclusion that felt completely logical to him. If lemon juice made writing invisible, it would make his face invisible too. The cameras, he was certain, would show nothing. "But I wore the juice," he told detectives. He wasn't lying, he genuinely believed it. This story landed on the desk of a psychology professor named David Dunning, and instead of laughing it off, he asked a question that most people wouldn't. Not, how could someone be that stupid? But how could someone be that wrong and that confident at the same time? That question led to one of the most important discoveries in modern psychology. And the answer, as it turns out, says something deeply uncomfortable about all of us. Here's what Dunning found. In 1999, he and his student Justin Kruger ran a series of experiments at Cornell University. They tested people on logical reasoning, grammar, and humour. Then they asked participants to estimate how well they'd performed, both absolutely and relative to others. The results were striking. People who scored in the bottom quarter consistently overestimated their performance, dramatically. They thought they'd done better than roughly 60% of participants. The actual figure was closer to 12%. But here's the part that rarely gets mentioned. The people who scored in the top quarter did the opposite. They underestimated how well they'd performed. They assumed others had found the test roughly as easy as they had, not realising that for most people, it wasn't easy at all. 2 completely different distortions, both happening simultaneously, both invisible to the people experiencing them. The low performers couldn't see their errors because the same skills required to perform well are the skills required to recognise poor performance. If you lack the ability to construct a logical argument, you also lack the ability to identify when your argument is flawed. The high performers couldn't see their advantage because they kept projecting their own competence onto others. They knew how to do it, so surely most people did too. Dunning called this the dual burden. Not just doing badly, also not knowing you're doing badly. And there's a specific version of this that happens in classrooms. And almost everyone has lived it from one side or the other. It's called the curse of knowledge. And it works like this. Once you truly understand something, once it becomes second nature, you lose the ability to remember what it felt like not to understand it. The concept that took you months to internalise now feels obvious, intuitive, barely worth explaining, and so you don't explain it. This is why brilliant professors sometimes make terrible teachers. Not because they don't know the material, because they know it too well. They've forgotten the shape of the confusion their students are living inside. The students sitting in that lecture, lost, wondering why nobody else seems confused. They're not slow. They're just on the other side of a gap their professor can no longer see. Now here's where it gets personal. Think about something you're genuinely good at, something you've put real time into, a skill, a field, a craft. Do you remember the early days? The confidence you had before you really knew what you were doing? And do you remember the moment that confidence started to crack? When you realised how much you didn't know? When the thing you thought was straightforward revealed itself to be an iceberg, and you'd only ever seen the tip? That shift and that descent into doubt is not weakness. It is the beginning of actual competence. The problem is it doesn't feel that way from the inside. From the inside, it feels like everyone else has figured something out that you haven't. Like you've somehow gone backwards. Like you were better at this when you knew less. You weren't better, you just couldn't see the shape of what you didn't know. There's a reason experts hedge. Why the best doctors say, "in my experience," rather than "definitely." Why the best cook in the room still tastes before serving. Why the sharpest thinkers are often the most reluctant to be certain. It's not lack of confidence, it's the opposite. They know enough to know what could go wrong. Certainty, it turns out, is often a sign of early stage understanding, not mastery. So here's the question worth sitting with. In your life right now, in your career, your relationships, your understanding of the world, where are you most certain? Not where are you most knowledgeable. Where are you most certain? Because those two things, as it turns out, don't always point in the same direction. McArthur Wheeler wasn't uniquely foolish. He was just at a specific point on a specific curve. A point where knowledge is low enough that its limits are completely invisible. The goal isn't to never be Wheeler. You can't avoid it. Every time you learn something new, you pass through that place. The goal is to notice when you're in it. And the signal, if you're paying attention, is that quiet, comfortable feeling that you've already figured it out. That feeling is not the destination. That feeling is the beginning. I'm the bias lens. We find the filters you didn't know you had. If this made you see yourself somewhere in that curve, subscribe. In the next episode, we're looking at why your brain is wired to see patterns that don't exist, make connections that aren't there, and find meaning in pure randomness. It's called apophenia. And once you understand it, you'll never look at a conspiracy theory or your own intuition the same way again.